Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rachel Starbuck from the Business Review, and I will be your host. I'd like to welcome you to our new webinar platform. You'll notice that this webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect, please click on the link that you received via email to rejoin. In order to ask questions, you can send them in via the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen, or please use the top left-hand box. We will allocate around 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. If you click on the green resource list widget, there is a PDF to view or download from our speakers. We also have a short survey for you to fill out, which can be found in the red survey widget, or will be available at the end of the webinar. Please use the help widget if you require any assistance. So it is our pleasure to have LTS Lohmann Therapy Systems with us today, who will be discussing transdermal drug delivery. Is it feasible for your drug? Today's guest speakers are Dr. Peter Klaffenbach, Head of Pharmaceutical Development, and Dr. Iris Snitchler, Marketing and Sales Intelligence. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome Iris.
Hello everyone. Let's get started with today's webinar. Since this is the first webinar of LTS, I think it would be of interest to you to start with a short introduction of our company. This year, LTS celebrates its 30th anniversary, and we would like to present some highlights of a remarkable success story to you. In particular, we would like to talk about our first and most important technology platform, the Transdermal System. In 1984, the company started its operations with a rather limited product portfolio. Ever since these beginnings, LTS has grown significantly to become the global market leader for the manufacture of transdermal systems. In 2013, we manufactured more than 850 million systems at our two sites, our headquarters in Andernach, Germany, and in the US in West Cornwall, New Jersey, generating sales of about 300 million euros. Today, LTS employs around 1,200 people with more than 150 working in development. Currently, LTS is engaged in more than 30 cooperation projects. LTS offers transdermal patches for a number of indications, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, pain treatment, smoking cessation, and various hormone products. LTS perceives itself as a full-service partner for the pharmaceutical industry, offering all services from feasibility studies to commercial manufacture for global supply. I now hand over the microphone to Peter for the scientific part of this presentation.
Thanks, Iris, and a very warm welcome from the R&D side. I'd like first to share with you a quick overview on the topics that we are going to discuss within the next about 40 minutes. So we talk about Tdf Designs and their advantages, so both from a pharmacological point of view and also from a patient point of view. I'd like to share with you some of the Tdf Designs and the advantages that we are currently producing. And then, of course, it's interesting to talk about the Tds and the APIs. So how do we do the assessment of APIs for feasibility in transdermal dosage forms? How do we do practical studies and feasibility of that? And I'd like to talk a little bit about the in vitro models that we use. And last but not least, I'd like to share with you some of the success stories in the Tds market with case studies and some market figures. And at the end, as Rachel already mentioned, we will have a discussion, and you will have the opportunity to ask some questions. But before we really start, I'd like to hand over to Rachel for a quick poll.
Thank you very much. So please select the answer that is relevant to you and then click Submit. So for today's first polling question, do you or does your company have any experience in controlled drug delivery technologies? If yes, what is the route of administration? And your answers are from A, yes, transdermal, B, yes, transmucosal, C, yes, oral, D, yes, others, or E, no. Please submit your answers now. So what are you expecting from this question?
Well, I would believe that we will see mainly yes on the oral, because this is what most people use, but maybe we also have a different audience that is particularly interested in transdermal and transmucosal. We'll see.
Okay then. So yes, transdermal seems to have been in the lead with 59%. Are these interesting results for you?
Yeah, I mean it shows that the audience is really on the TTS pathway, and I look forward to present hopefully some interesting insights into that dosage form to the audience. Okay. Let's talk about the true alternative, as we named it, the transdermal therapeutic systems. The TTS can deliver active pharmaceutical substance directly to the skin. And depending on the properties, the substance can then either act topically or systemically. And unlike other drug delivery systems, TTS also allow for precise delivery over extended periods of time. And TTS may also minimize or even completely eliminate side effects. And we have a closer look into those features within the next few minutes. So let's take a look into TTS from a pharmacological side first. What advantages do we have here? They show no first pass effect. Well, what that means, we take a close look onto that in a few minutes. The active substance do not pass through the gastrointestinal tract, so we don't have any impact on the GI tract, and so GI-related side effects can be reduced or even completely eliminated. We provide constant plasma levels, meaning that we don't have peak-trough fluctuations. And unlike the conventional dosage forms and injectables, where you have a fast onset and a high Cmax with potentially side effects caused by that, and then you have the sharp drop and, again, potential lack of efficacy later on. So that's something we can avoid here. They are ideal for active substances with a narrow therapeutic window, because the plasma level will remain within therapeutically effective window all over the time. We can effectively compensate for short drug half-life, so we replenish all the API that is metabolized without any user action. It's pharmacokinetically similar to continuous intravenous infusion, but of course it's not invasive and can be self-applied by the patient. The dosages can be adjusted easily by changing the size of the active area of the patch. And that's an important feature for pharma companies because it really simplifies the development. And last but not least, you have excellent control over the active substance release, so we can really make a tailored release profile. From a patient side of view, there are some aspects, and probably most important, it's not invasive. So we have no needles, no needle phobia, we have no swallowing of bulk tablets. The TTS duration of action can be up to 7 days. So that means stick and forget for up to 1 week. There's a potential of fewer side effects. We talked about that already, and we have a closer look on that later on. There's the potential of a quick discontinuation of the drug delivery in the event of an adverse drug reaction. For example, when you take an antihypertensive and you have hypotonic episodes. So that's something that's very unique to this dosage form. You can't do with any other dosage form. TTS are a suitable instrument for improved compliance. It helps patients to adhere to the medication. So it's improved treatment, improved efficacy, and also improved economics. And it can be used very easily and discreetly. The improved bioavailability and fewer side effects. So first of all, when we take a look into orally administered substances, they must pass through the liver before they can enter the bloodstream and are distributed through the body. This process can eliminate up to 99% of an active substance. TTS, on the other hand, deliver drugs directly through the skin, thereby bypassing the gastrointestinal tract. And the TDS technology really avoids first-pass effects since the active substance enters the bloodstream directly to the skin, and we see that on the next slide in more detail. It helps to reduce side effects by reducing the peak-trough ratio, by eliminating the GI pass, and also by limiting the dose to that amount that is really needed. And it reduces the active substance needed to achieve the same level or even better effect compared to conventionals, and that means there's less burden to the body. Next slide, I would like to share with you a typical example on the side effects. So let's take a look at the oxybutynine, which is a very famous compound, and the most common adverse drug reaction is dry mouth, which is caused by the N-desmethyl oxybutyn metabolite, short form DO. And so let's take a few minutes to view the slides. So on the right, you see the typical plasma over time profile from a conventional oral extended release form. What you can see is with the black marks rather low, this is oxybutynine, and the white hollow circles is the DO, the metabolites. So we do have relatively constant plasma levels, but the metabolite is approximately 5 times higher than the oxybutynine. And keep in mind, it is the metabolite that's really responsible for the dry mouth effect. On the left, you have the typical plasma profile from a transdermal patch. So you have just one application for 4 days, and although you see also some of the metabolites appearing, it's roughly the same amount of active substance compared to the metabolite. So the ratio between metabolite and the active substance is much better. Maybe you ask yourself, why does the metabolite shows up anyway? You should avoid first-pass metabolism. That's true, but eventually every blood will pass through the liver while it's circulating through the body. So the blood will pass through the liver, and you will see some metabolism, but of course it's much lower compared to the oral form. So on the next slide, we take a look into the various Tdf designs, the features and advantages that we can today commercially manufacture as LTS. So first, this may seem to be familiar to most of you, the Monolithic Matrix Tds, which is a very simple and convincing design. The most important advantages, it's a very simple design. The active substance is embedded directly into the adhesive. You can obtain a controlled and constant even release of the API. It's a preferred design for a favorably cost-benefit ratio. The second option that we do is a multi-layer matrix TDS that gives precise dosage even with large quantities of active substance. And here you have a distinct feature of several layers containing active substances that can be combined, either using different concentration or all the same concentration. You can achieve a high drug pooling effect, or you can modulate a specific delivery profile, or it's also possible you have a drug-free skin layer for optimized adhesion. There's also the reservoir matrix TDS, as we call it, that can be used for volatile or thermolabile compounds. And it's very suitable for those compounds because you don't need to pass through the drying tunnel on that. And it also gives you a very effective active substance utilization. And with this design, you may also employ a rate controlling membrane depending on the specific properties of the API. Then there's a matrix TDS with the overlapping backing layer, and that is underlined here as high efficiency. This design is very important in case of very expensive active substance. Why is that? Well, usually you use a die cutting process for the manufacturing of TDS, and that produces lots of waste as you have a web that's remaining after die cutting. For this process here, we use a slitting process, which gives you optimum yield here. It's also particularly suitable for the use of less stable APIs that can only be combined with a limited number of adhesives. So the cover patch gives you excellent adhesion, and you don't need to achieve the adhesion just by the API, by the adhesive itself. The microreservoir matrix Tds, well, that's subtitled with enhanced thermodynamics. So what does that mean? Here we have the API dispersed in a polymer layer. And in situ, meaning while the patch is worn, we generate a hypersaturated system. So that gives us best thermodynamic delivery, yet we have a stable patch during shelf life. And it also gives us best substance utilization. And just to share some numbers with you, the fentanyl patch that we have with that design, our methylphane, that contains only 2.75 milligrams of active substance. The same dosage from the originator contains 4.2 milligram API. So the form produced by LTS contains just 35% less API. So that's, I think, an important number. Then there's the design with a rate controlling membrane. This is something we sometimes need for an extremely accurate active substance release. And the distinct advantage is that we have an ideal system for highly potent active substance with a narrow therapeutic range. And you have a totally different release profile compared to conventional TTS, because the release is no longer controlled by the adhesive, but by the rate controlling membrane. It's therefore mainly used for those compounds that readily penetrate the skin. So let's talk a little bit about TTS and active substance. So which active substance can be delivered with TTS? Well, here we can offer you the development expertise of the market leader. And that means that we have a very rapid evaluation of active substances, sometimes also called paper assessment or paper feasibility. And then there's the true feasibility phase with a practical confirmation of the results generated in the paper assessment. So first of all, take a look into the theoretical phase. It's a unique approach. First of all, we have a harmonized list of predefined parameters consisting of physical and chemical parameters, like molecular weight or melting point, but of course pharmacological parameters like half-life time and also the effective dose are also important. Well, maybe you don't have all parameters available initially. That's okay, because we don't need all parameters for an assessment. But of course, the more you know about the compound, the more accurate the feasibility assessment can be. And then there's a fact known to everyone, is that not every parameter is equally important. And based on our long-term experience of over 30 years, we have a weighing system of those parameters, weighing the important parameters heavier compared to the less important. And then, even if based on the chemical and physical characteristics of a compound may be suitable for transdermal delivery, there are certain knockout criteria. For example, if you have a product that needs liver activation, then that may be delivered transdermally, but of course it wouldn't make sense. So that's important to identify those knockout criteria. And then that's probably something that's very unique to the LTS model. We have a single number as a benchmark of TTS feasibility, and it no longer depends on the individual person making this assessment. So this system creates a kind of unified evaluation that will give similar results every time you enter the same information, and not only depends on the experience of the individual that performs that evaluation. So once we determine that a compound may be feasible for transdermal application and we move into the practical phase, we take, of course, then flux measurement from various Tds polymers. And that, again, is probably unique to LTS because we can offer to our clients the complete range of adhesives from acrylates to polyisobutylene to SIS and also silicones. So we can use the adhesive that is best suited for the API. And of course, sometimes you do need enhancers to get enough material through the skin. So there's an extensive list of potential enhancers that can be screened. And using the best formulation, of course, then human skin permeation would be performed in order to confirm that. All this activity needs to be backed by suitable analytical methods, which are developed in-house by the colleagues from analytical development. And they would, of course, do testability studies in order to make an assessment how that formulation performs in terms of stability. And that also includes then the evaluation of suitable components like backing, release liner, and of course the primary packaging material. So what can you expect as a result of that practical phase? First and most important, we can give you a good estimation of the likelihood of a successful transdermal patch development. And you get a proposal for the TTS development program, including activities, timelines, and costs. We will make a selection of TTS candidate formulations for preclinical studies. And of course, we can manufacture those TTS candidate formulations for non-GMP preclinical studies. Sometimes we also use a different approach, and that very often applies to new chemical entities because those substances have a different scenario. The theoretical phase, of course, is very similar to the conventional paper feasibility. Based on the physical-chemical parameters and the pharmacological parameters, we make the feasibility assessment. But when it goes to the practical phase, there's a focus on generating quick results, yet still using a limited amount of API, because most often at that stage, only very few milligrams of API is available. And the focus here is to evaluate the feasibility very quickly during early substance development prior to making any further decisions on the candidate. So during every practical phase, the in vitro studies are utmost important because despite all the theoretical knowledge that we have, skin permeation is the most important tool in the development. And here at LTS, we have a very broad range of in vitro models available. And maybe on top of the list, because most important, is the human epidermis, which is, of course, the highest relevance to the in vivo situation. But human epidermis also has certain disadvantages, like limited supply and also a certain variability. So therefore, there are a number of animal models that are currently used, and depending on the stage of development and the specific aim of a study, we can choose from either cow udder or pig ear or guinea pig or hairless rat or hairless mouse skin. So depending on the need of a study, we can select the in vitro model that gives the best results here. So the skin is a barrier, and face it, the skin is designed by nature to keep substances and xenophobics out of the human body. So what can we do to overcome the skin barrier? And there are probably four groups of tools that you can select. First is the thermodynamic, and that's probably most often applied. You can either have oversaturated system. They give you the best performance in terms of skin flux. However, they lack long-term stability because an oversaturated system always has a tendency to crystallize. And once you see the crystallization, well, then you have that oversaturated system situation no longer existing, meaning that your flux will decrease. Now, there's one special way to overcome that, and I already mentioned that in situ activation by using special formulation. So, for example, you can use the moisture from the skin to activate the API in the formulation to generate that oversaturated situation while the patch is worn and not during stability, not during shelf life, excuse me. Then we have the chemical means of enhancement, and that is, of course, permeation enhancers, at utmost important, and very often also discussed in the literature the use of liposomes. Currently, we don't use liposomes in our formulations because they have they failed to demonstrate sufficient stability. But of course, it is a way to overcome the skin barrier. Mechanically, first, the sonoriphorese, we're using ultrasound, which is a well-known feature in the academic. To my knowledge, no system is on the market commercially utilizing this technology. And in the last couple of years, the microneedles have generated an increasing amount of work to mechanically overcome the skin barrier. And I'm quite sure that we will see a lot of products coming from that technology in the near future. And last but not least, there's also the option of using electrical current, so-called iontophoresis. That technology has been around for almost 10 years, or even maybe more than 10 years. However, the early systems generated in the late 90s had a lack of stability because the corrosion of the electrodes was something that was really hard to get under control. Very recently, RDS and its partner has successfully registered and approved an antiphoretic patch that overcame that hurdle of stability. So we do now see a commercially available antiphoresis product in the market, and that again may spark further development in the future. So when we go into the TDS success stories, I've picked 3 examples to share with you. And before we go into this in more detail, Iris will give you a quick overview on the global market potential for transdermal. And then we take a look into our new Pro formulation with the improved bioavailability. We share with you some information on the TransTech opportunity that has opened new therapeutic fields for well-known API. And last but not least, the Exelon as an example where the TTS really have outperformed all other dosage forms. But first, I have to hand over to Iris for the market numbers.
There are numerous transdermal delivery systems currently available on the market. However, the transdermal market still remains limited to a rather narrow range of drugs. In 2013, the pharmaceutical industry reported sales of approximately 4.35 billion euros for various TTS products. Compared to the total pharmaceutical market, with estimated annual sales of 730 billion euros, it is still a niche with a share of about 0.6%.
Okay, so first case study I would like to share with you today is a NeuPro, and that is the first API that came to the market only as a TTS. So very early in the development, it was realized that for raticotin, which is the API, the oral bioavailability is so poor that an oral dosage form cannot be developed. So the challenge here was to overcome that poor bioavailability with the oral administration by using the TTS. So that really is a solution. And on the next slide, you can see some of the milestones that we have here. So the product, the development really started back in 1998 with the proof of concept data becoming available and the collaboration agreement signed between LTS and Schwarz Pharma, that now is UCB. And only 6 years later, and I would really like to emphasize the point, only 6 years later, because we talk about not only the full-blown pharmaceutical development, but also the full-blown clinical development for very challenging indication like Parkinson. So 6 years later, product was submitted to EMA, and within 2 years, we obtained approval by EMA, and 2 years later, approval by FDA, and even only 4 years later, approval from Japan was followed. So this product now is really truly a global product.
Let's have a look at the sales figures. In early 2014, UCB reported that more than 229,000 patients were provided with Nupro prescriptions in 41 countries. In 2013, the sales of Nupro reached $274 million, having a compound annual growth rate of 22% over 5 years.
Okay, the second study I'd like to share with you is a Northbound Transdermal opportunity. So it's really subtitled here, TDS leads to new therapeutic fields. What does it mean? Okay, this TDS is using buprenorphine. Buprenorphine as an API has been around for quite some time, used in anesthesia as an injection. However, here we look into a product that is indicated for mild, severe chronic pain, like osteoarthritis. And the challenge here that we have, and certainly we have an abuse potential and difficult handling of parenteral dosage form. So that's nothing you can really give to the patient for home use. The solution is, yes, the TTS reduces the abuse potential. Although you cannot completely eliminate the abuse potential, it's much harder to extract API from a transdermal patch than from an injectable solution. And the TTS enables very constant plasma levels and a longer duration. And here we have an action of up to 7 days. And we also see significantly reduced side effects here. Again, some numbers on the history. The development started back in 1995 with the agreement between LTS and partners Grünenthal for Europe and Tdf Pharma for the US. And only 4 years later, we gained first approval by BfArM in Germany as a first European country. The FDA approval process took longer because there were a number of concerns raised by FDA in terms of safety of the product. But all of those questions could be answered eventually. So in 2010, the product was approved by FDA, and only 1 year later was also approved in Japan. And again, we now see a truly global product here.
Let's have a look also at the sales figures. In 2013, the combined sales of Northbound and Transdermal exceeded $500 million. The products are currently available in more than 50 countries. The compound annual growth rate over the last 5 years is more than 15%.
All right, and here comes my favorite case study, the Exelon. Why is it favorite? Well, subtitles, the TTS outperforms the oral delivery form, and that's what it really does, and Iris will show you the numbers later on. But first have a look in the product. It's treatment of Alzheimer's disease. The active substance is rivastigmine, and I noticed from the list of participants, and there are a couple of competitors on the attendees, and maybe some of them are also working on this product because it's a very successful product. The challenge here is that we have a pharmacokinetic profile that gave serious side effects when administered orally, and that was mainly vomiting, nausea and vomiting, and that has led to a large number of people discontinuing treatment. And TDS offers constant plasma levels and thereby was leading to an enormous reduction of those side effects. So the history behind, well, development started in 1992, and now it took us about 8 years before the oral reverse-dicamine was approved by FDA, and even 7 more years before the Tds was approved by both EMA and FDA. So this time you may argue, well, this is 15 years of development. That's kind of slow. True, but on the other hand, the Tds development was not driven with the first priority, because focus was given to the oral dosage form, as it was believed that the Tds would only be a line extension to the oral form. In 2011, again, in my mind, relatively quickly, the approval in Japan was obtained, so we do have a truly global product now.
I have to agree to Peter, this is really a special story for TTS development. The total Exelon sales in 2013 were reported with more than $1 billion. The compound annual growth rate over the last 5 years is around 8%. The overwhelming majority of sales, namely 92%, was achieved by the Exelon patch. In Europe, generic competition started very recently. The impact on sales figures of the Exelon patch will have to be awaited.
So you can see it was a long time development, but because priority was given to the oral dosage form. So the message I'd like to send to the auditorium here is that you should consider TTS as first line treatment even very early in the development. Okay, it's time for the quick poll, and I'd like to hand over to Rachel for that.
Thank you very much, Peter. So for your next poll question, is there an API within your company's portfolio which you could potentially consider delivering through a TTS? And the answers are from A, yes, B, no, or C, I don't know. Please submit your answers now. So what are you expecting from this question, Peter and Iris?
We hope that there are a large number of people clicking on yes or don't know, because if they know it's suitable, they should contact us, and if they don't know, they should contact us too. But let's see.
Okay, then, well, let's find out. Was it a range? Are these interesting results for you?
Yeah, I guess we talk about 80% of people that either know they have a compound or are not sure, and so that's plenty of opportunity for us to follow after that webinar. So I think it's an excellent result. I like that.
So, Peter, the summary.
The summary, yeah. So in the past about 38 minutes or so, I shared with you, Eric shared with you some figures on the market overview. We talked about TTS benefits, both from a pharmacological point of view, but also from a patient's point of view. We talked a lot about TTS technology, and I showed you the large number of different designs that can be produced commercially, depending on what your API really needs. And then we talked intensively about our drug substance evaluation system. So how does RTS work with you as a partner in order to evaluate the suitability of a specific API? And last but not least, we've covered some of the success stories that in our mind should demonstrate how suitable that dosage form really is in order to generate also commercial success. Very often we are asked, how do we see the future? Because transdermal delivery has been around since the late 70s. Well, currently we see that we have commercial products at RTS with 12 APIs for the various partners, and there are additional active substance as potential TTS candidates. Looking into the large number of APIs that are out there, about 7,000 or 8,000, that seems to be a low number, yet still the number is growing,
So I don't think that the technology has really reached its peak yet. But there are new technologies. What I would call the third generation system, like the active compound, the active systems, iontophoresis, they offer new opportunities. We can deliver much larger molecules, much quicker, and at a much higher rate than with passive systems. And although they possess certain challenges in the development, they offer a complete new field, and I'm sure we see more of those in the next years emerging from development. And then, maybe in the time frame of 3 to 5 years, we will see what I would call a fourth generation system, mainly from the microneedle, but also from electroporation, that paving the way for macromolecules and vaccine technology that we today cannot make available with transdermal systems. So with that slide, I'd like to share with you our vision on transdermal systems, and that is that we have transdermal systems are accepted and preferred first choice drug delivery systems, the seamless integration of Tds advantages into processes for identifying and optimizing lead compounds within state-of-the-art R&D activities allows transdermal patches to overcome the pharmaceutical barriers inherent in orally administered drugs. And that's what we are here for. We are here for to help our partners to exactly make that vision become true. So with that, I think it's time to thank you for your attention, time to thank you for the time you've spent, and we can now open the question and answer session, and I hand over to Rachel for that.
Thank you very much, Peter. So yes, it is now time for the question and answers section. So thank you to everyone who has already sent their questions in. Please continue to send in your questions via the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen, or please use the top left-hand box. We will try and get through as many questions as possible. However, if we do not have time to answer them all in this webinar, then Peter and Iris will get back to you at a later date. So for your first question, what kind of API is suitable for transdermal patch formulation?
Well, there's a list of parameters that makes a compound suitable. The utmost importance is the size of the molecule. There are different numbers discussed in the literature. The highest molecular weight that we currently have commercially available is around 480 Daltons. That's really at the upper end, and generally you could say the lower the number, the better the compound is. The second important parameter is log P, so that means the balance between hydrophilic and lipophilic properties. And of course, at the end of the day, everything comes down to the dose, because when you look at estradiol, for example, it may not be very favorable from the physical-chemical parameters, but you only need so few micrograms of estradiol, so that still is a commercially available and commercially successfully available product. So I would suggest that if you are in doubt with that, just contact LTS, and we can check on the parameters, and we can make a good estimation on that.
Thank you very much. And what percentage of API is left on the TTS once its patient life is over?
Yep, that's a very difficult question. In general, the yield is never 100%, because we talk about diffusion processes, either passive or active, and that means at the end of the delivery, there will be some substance left. And in the commercially available systems, numbers go from maybe 80% that's left in the product, like the hormones, down to 20% that we do see in our fentanyl patch. But most products probably range somewhere in the 50% area.
Thank you very much. And for how many days is the Exelon patch?
It's a one-day patch. Exelon is a once-a-day patch.
Which I think maybe answers the next question. The next question was, does FDA approve 7 days patch? Oh
yeah, several. The Transtrack is a 7-day patch, but there are also several hormone patches. There are also birth control patches available that are used for 7 days. The FDA doesn't have a problem with 7 days. You need to demonstrate that the product is safe and efficacious, and then you can have it approved.
Thank you very much. And does your company have a financial program to co-develop a drug with another pharmaceutical company?
I wouldn't call it a financial program, but maybe that is something that goes more to marketing. I would think that generally LTS is open to any sort of business cooperation, and we should not exclude anything. So please, if you have any specific requests, just get in touch with us, and I'm sure we can work out a solution here.
Yes, agree.
Thank you very much. And are steroids feasible for TTS delivery?
Yeah, definitely there are. There are several hormone patches available. Most common is the estradiol patch, and also there are patches for birth control containing synthetic estradiol, and there are also testosterone patches available. It's not the steroid base structure. It more comes down to the side groups that makes a steroid either feasible or not feasible. So you cannot say in general yes or in general no. There are some steroids that are available and some that won't be.
Thank you very much. And is it possible to modify existing TTS products from 3 days application to 1 day?
That's something that really maybe goes down more to a marketing question, also a clinical question. It's probably also something you need to design from a clinical point of view. We have seen those requests, especially from Japan, because in Japan the more than 1 day patches are not that highly valued as they are in Europe and the US, because in Japan people like to have a fresh patch every day, and one would probably like to reduce the amount of API in the patch by maybe applying a thinner coating in order to have less drug in the product. But generally speaking, yes, it's probably easier to go from a 3 day patch to a 1 day patch than vice versa. But yeah, it's certainly something that can be done.
Thank you very much. And what is the best type of adhesive for TTS system?
I would think the best one is that the best adhesive is the one that does the job, that delivers the right amount of API and that sticks to the skin for the desired amount of time, and that doesn't cause any adverse skin reaction. So when you look into the products that are on the market, you find everything from polyisobutylene to acrylates, SIS, and also silicones. And I would believe that every adhesive has certain pros and cons, and you need to pick the one that's best for the product.
Thank you very much. And your next question, how transdermal are APIs in a topical preparation, cream or pint or gel, etc.?
You mean if our assessment tool is also suitable for creams and ointments? Fairly speaking, I don't know, because our dosage form really is transdermal, so all the tools we have are focused on the transdermal route, and I would not know how those tools would really perform on creams and ointments, because we don't manufacture those. So frankly speaking, I don't know. I cannot answer.
Okay, thank you very much. And what are the typical differences in shelf life of a TTS when compared to its oral dose equivalent?
Yeah, well, to be fair, TTS are more challenging on the shelf life perspective, and from a commercial perspective, we know that anything less than 2 years is probably difficult, because then the supply chain becomes very difficult. At the high end, we do see products with 5 years shelf life, but it's the exception. So I would think that most products are either 24 months or 36 months shelf life.
Thank you very much. And can you briefly review what chemical characteristics are most suitable?
Yes, as we said, molecular weight, the melting point, the log P, those are the ones that are most relevant. Then there are secondary parameters like the number of conjugated rings and how the molecule can be twisted, those ones. But the outmost, or one of the outmost important parameters also the dose, because whatever we do, the amount of substance that can be delivered to the skin is kind of limited, and it will only remain in the lower milligram region. So something like 100 or 200 milligrams is something you cannot deliver transdermally. So you need to have a potent drug.
Thank you very much. And do you foresee TTS products for OTC use?
Oh yeah, definitely. There are. I mean, for example, the nicotine patches are OTC in Europe. I believe there are also some in the US. There are also some, I'm just thinking, no, the hormone products are, of course, all RX. Exelon, of course, RX. The Nupro is RX. All the painkillers RX. Yeah, but it's probably the nicotine. And yeah, there are some non-pharmaceutical products, also some cosmetic products. But I would think the majority is RX. There are some that are OTC.
Thank you very much. And how does the stability of drug in a TTX matrix compared to oral formulations?
In general, more challenging. The simple reason, the molecule can move rather freely in the TTS formulation. So with that regard, it's more similar to a solution, and being available to movement, it's also available to chemical reaction. So it's less stable as such. But of course, there are different means of stabilizing the molecule, starting from antioxidant until preservatives, maintaining pH control, and also other techniques that I don't want to disclose in too much detail. But in general, yes, it is one of the parameters that is key in the development phase. You do need to develop a stable product.
Thank you very much. And what are the fundamental technological limitations of TTS that hamper the delivery of macromolecules?
Yeah, it's the size of the molecule. The skin is really designed to keep xenobiotics out of the body. And the skin does that perfectly well, and only very small molecules can navigate their way through the skin barrier. And it's only by things like microneedles that gives the way to macromolecules. If we don't open the skin mechanically, I would think that we would not be able to deliver large molecules through the skin. We know that we can deliver large molecules like peptides through the buccal mucosa. That's possible, but buccal mucosa is also not such a tight barrier compared to the human skin.
Thank you very much. And it sounds like biologics are still beyond transdermal delivery's reach.
Yes. Clear, yes, it is. Today it is. I think we really need to focus on technologies like microneedles or electroporation to make possible macromolecules. But it is within the reach of the patch technology. It's just probably beyond the reach of passive diffusion technology.
Thank you very much. And what other excipients or inactive ingredients are typically used in TTS patches?
Yeah, the main part is, of course, the adhesive, as that serves several aspects. First and most important, of course, it needs to attach the product safely to the skin, and that's, of course, important. If the patch doesn't stick, then it won't deliver. And secondly, it needs to keep the API dissolved and also must release the API to the skin. The second most important excipients are probably things like permeation enhancer, and third most important, stabilizers like pH control and antioxidant and these type of things. And then, of course, which is also considered an excipient, the backing film and also the release liner, both plastic films, are important features of the product.
Thank you very much. And are there differences in drug transport rates across the skin depending on the age group of the patients?
No, I would think there's no general term of age. In the literature, we have seen several studies discussing both age, gender of the patients, and there was no conclusive decision on age, gender, or also the ethnic component on the delivery. But there are different parts of the skin that are more permeable, like behind the ear, and there is a product for use behind the ear, which is a scopolamine patch for motion sickness treatment, and that's to be used behind the ear. That area is very permeable. The male scrotum is very permeable, and most products are directed to be placed on either the arm, the upper body, the back, or the side, and you may want to use an area of the body where you have very few or maybe even no hair, because the hair will, of course, hurt when you remove the patch.
Thank you very much. And does LTS have interest in developing a smart patch that would act both as a biosensor and delivery device to measure bioanalytics and deliver the drug when needed?
Of course, we are always interested in new technologies, and we think that smart patches will be or will have a future. So yes, of course.
Thank you very much. And then for your last question, what is SIS?
Yeah, I noticed that I'm using too many abbreviations. I'm sorry for that. These are styrene isoprene block copolymers, so a specific type of adhesive that is not used very often, but if it does, it provides some unique properties. It's also known to be very skin friendly. So it's basically synthetic rubber.
Thank you very much. And sadly, that is all we have time for. If we did not get around to answering your question, then Peter or Iris will get back to you at a later date. So that just leaves me to thank Peter and Iris for what was a great presentation, and thanks to LTS Lohmann Therapy Systems for sponsoring this session. To the attendees, you'll receive an email shortly telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar. Or you can access this through our website, which is www.businessreviewwebinars.com. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on the website just mentioned and follow us on Twitter, which is @BRWebinars for daily updates, and join our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. So thank you once again, and I hope you all have a nice day.